Hey everybody, welcome to the Jim Brown Podcast. I'm your host Raj, and welcome to episode 44, where we look at the Eden of Grisaia. Now, if you don't actually follow the podcast on Twitter, then you're probably wondering, why is this a week late? Well, I had an issue, and that issue was corruption of audio. We've actually only lost audio one other time on the podcast, and since then, we've been pretty good at keeping it and, well, having backups and stuff. But something just went wrong. My audio just completely crapped out, was corrupted, was horrendously unusable. And that meant I had to basically redo everything, which is what I'm doing right now. But further question, why does it take an entire week to redo this podcast? It's honestly just the way that I set up things. I have a specific day where I do the recording, and then I have a specific time where I can do the editing, and then I have to render everything, blah, 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 put it up, blah, 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 technical stuff. Short answer is everything has a fixed schedule, and that schedule is broken. It's really hard to get back on track because I hate saying this because it's been said a lot. I am busy. Unfortunately, real life gets in the way of doing podcasts. I have a kind of hectic work schedule in that I don't really have set times where I work. Or, well, how do I put this? I have a set number of days, but the hours fluctuate extraordinarily. That's kind of by choice. And I'm generally okay with that, but it makes it kind of difficult to orient myself where I can do a podcast. But it is possible for me to do one each week. It just so happened that the destruction of the audio made it so I had to redo everything, which made it take another week. So sorry about that. Really sucks that happened, but what are you going to do, right? Okay. So now that that's out of the way, we are talking about the Eden of Grisaia. Now, if you remember, the Fruit of Grisaia was something that we covered on this podcast a couple of seasons ago as it was airing back when we did recaps. And I had a very positive attitude to it. So did Spencer, actually. We both really liked it. I consider it a complete success of an adaptation of a visual novel because it actually made me go and play the VN, and then I ended up 100%ing it into multiple playthroughs, etc., etc. That, as far as I'm concerned, that is the perfect kind of VN, an anime adaptation of a VN that makes you go and play the source material. That means it's perfect. Fate Stay Night never did that. Just saying. But so. I absolutely loved The Fruit of Grisaia. I thought that series was really, really good. It had a lot of faults, but something that Grisaia really has going for it, which, now that thinking about it, Fate Stay actually does too, is that the production value is top notch. They do everything like this letterbox, like you're watching a film kind of thing, and it's just really, really nice to look at. And I'm a big fan of the art style, especially the contrast between like the soft features of all the girls, and then you have the hard lines of Yuji. It's just a kind of nice contrast. But so the first season was received very well by me and then us here at J&B. And then the second season was announced to be released very soon, with a third coming up again, or a third coming up afterwards. And then I got really excited because I was really happy with the way season 1 ended, and I was really looking forward to where season 2 and 3 went. And then I played the VN, and then I got kind of confused because playing the VN, spoiler free, every route you take with every girl, you never go back to school. You end up basically living your life out with her. In some cases, you're well into your adult years. In others, it's just a few months after the route ends, so you're still a teenager. But bottom line is you never go back to school, which is weird because then how are they going to do a second season when they're at school? It brought up a lot of questions in my mind, especially since they pretty much ended on the Amane route. They chose Amane in The Fruit of Grisaia, which was fine. Well, not really. I think she's actually one of the worst girls. Yumiko, best girl forever. But since they chose the Amane route, they basically, at least my thought was, they would have to continue with that on to the next season. Although they didn't really do that with Eden. But I'll get into that a little bit later. The first season of Grisaia, basically, let's finish up here with that. It was Yuji going through every single girl's route, each of them falling in love with him, and then he ends on Amine's route, and then Amine is the only girl he actually accepts. Every other girl had fallen for him, but he never accepted them as his lover. And then he got to Amine's, and that was the last route and the last arc. And also, apparently one of the most popular, Angelic Howl, was like... Actually, now that I think about it, I really, really enjoyed Angelic Howl. I just didn't like Amine, which I guess is fair. But anyway... And then in the end, Yuji chooses Amine, and then Amine, of course, is in love with him. So now they're kind of dating, and then the season ended with a preview for the next season, which was this dude in blonde hair shooting a rocket at a helicopter, I think. And then we come into the second season. The second season has an episode 0, and I love it when they have episode 0s because, and again, going back to Fate's Day Night episode 0 was phenomenal. I loved that episode. Although it also kind of ruined me because then I thought Tosaka was going to be the main character and I really liked her, and then we had to deal with Emiya, and well, that was a whole bag of something. Anyway, so we get into the second season. The second season is it's kind of clever what they did here, and I really like it. And I get that it's off the VN, but still. So what they do with the second season is that they tackle the one mystery that was left open from the first season. The one thing we didn't actually find too much about, and that's Yuji. If you think about it, without this, from just the end of the first season, you barely know anything about him. You know, he had a bit of a troubled past. You know that at least his sister died, and he had troubles with the rest of his family. He had to move in with Asako, his master, and that like she pretty much raised him, and he called himself worthless and a piece of crap and stuff like that. You know he had a troubled past. You know he was in some sort of military army situation, but you didn't know for sure. And that's it. So having this season pretty much completely flesh out Yuji's character is a good idea. It's a great idea. And so the episode 0 starts off with like the beginning of Yuji, and which is basically the relationship of his sister and the relationship with his mother and father. So the relationship with his... and something clever they do with this is that... it's kind of clever. I kind of thought it was a little cliche, but they do this thing where Yuji is going to get a promotion at his job at Ichigaya. And he has to basically write a history of himself, and so that's his entire past, and he puts it through a shredder. But then Sachi, being the unbelievably amazing maid she is, puts it back together, and then she and the rest of the girls are reading it at the same time that we, the viewers, are seeing the flashback. So everybody will be caught up on his story at the same time, which is really nice. So we flash back to Yuji's past. This is around the age that he met Sachiko, so he's just a little kid. And this is where we get to learn the relationship with his sister. And he talked very, very highly of his sister in the first season. So this was a nice kind of twofer, getting to know both the sister and Yuji at the same time. So Yuji's sister was a genius, a child genius who was beautiful. She was gifted in beauty, talent of the arts, an incredible brain. And her, I guess, great flaw is the fact that she is an incredible brocon who's really, really incestuous. There's one point. She pretty much... Yuji will do whatever he says, or whatever his sister says, because his sister pretty much runs the household, because she is a genius at art, like I already said, to the point where her family makes their living selling her artwork. That's how good it is. And because of that, since she's the golden goose of this household, nobody will defy her. And that includes Yuji, but Yuji will not defy her, not because of that, but because he respects her, and he respects her intellect, he respects her position as his older sister as well, and he respects the kind of power that she has like that. Although he was the one who admitted that he thought that he was the only one who saw his sister for being manipulative. But despite her manipulative nature, he still said he loved her. But yeah, his sister, Yuji would do whatever his sister told him to. That included taking baths, and that bath scene was, wow, it was not something I exactly saw coming. Basically, she and Yuji take a bath, which is fine. Brothers and sisters do that in Japan. And she washes him, which is fine. And then she Spider-Man kisses Yuji. And then she asks him, like, is it wrong to love your sister? And Yuji says no. And she's like, I don't think it's wrong either. And then she explains to Yuji what incest is. And she's like, I don't think incest is wrong, Yuji. And then she's kind of just reaffirming herself that her love for her little brother is not wrong, which fine, I guess. Yumiko's still best girl, just saying. But his sister, or his relationship with his sister, was really strange in that regard. And then his sister, the one who pretty much ran the household, both financially and like through leadership in a way, dies. But we know that from Ominous story already. And then that like brought the house completely down. His Yuji's father went into a deep, just alcoholism. He went deep into alcoholism, and he would beat Yuji, and he would beat Yuji's mom. And Yuji's mom would, up until this point, would always kind of put her distance between herself and Yuji. And Yuji was kind of neglected in that, like, he wouldn't really get dinner. Like, his family would go out for dinner, and then he would be left at home with a piece of bread. And he would dunk that bread in water, and he'd eat it. And that would be his dinner. And yes, this is mistreating a child, yes. But at this point, and this is still episode 0, but at this point, I was thinking Yuji, compared to how the other girls had it really, really good. I mean, sure, his dad doesn't like him. Sure, his mom doesn't really show him love. And sure, he has to eat wet bread, but he doesn't have to watch his dad die in front of him. He doesn't have to watch his friends be eaten by his club members. He doesn't have to have a little teacher call him an idiot over and over and watch his best friend jump off a school and kill herself. He doesn't have to, I don't know what else happened. Oh, he doesn't have to watch your mother pretty much commit suicide because your dad just used her. And you don't have to watch your dad try to use you because the heir to his family is now dead. So at this point, I was like, well, Yuji had it pretty good, all things considered, with the other girls. Oh boy, I was very, very wrong about that. So after his sister died, after Kazuki died, Yuji's dad got very abusive. He beat his mom, he beat Yuji. Eventually the mom had enough of this, and she grabbed Yuji and said, we're running away together. So they ran away. They found a new house, and then for a year everything was okay. Like things were bad financially. Mom would work night and day to take care of Yuji, but they were getting by. And then the dad found them. And the dad was mad that they ran away, and he beat them again, and he raped Yuji's mom, trying to conceive a second Kazuki. And this is where Yuji had enough, and he ended up killing his father, which I thought was actually a cool scene. I really liked it. The rape with his mom was really sad, and then his mom tells Yuji to run away, and then she'll follow him shortly after. And then she never comes, and she ends up committing suicide. And this pretty much breaks Yuji. This really, really sucks. Interesting side note. If you haven't played the VN, although I guess I should have said this in the beginning. First of all, I know I've spoiled a lot already, but spoilers, if you're listening to this should be like a staple for all JMB reviews. It's spoilers galore. There'll always be spoilers. This is going to be spoilers for the VN as well. I'm going to spoil a bit of that starting now. Interestingly, I was thinking like Yuji's dad isn't a very good looking guy. Yuji and his sister didn't really get their looks from him. And then I saw and then I saw the mom, and I'm like, oh yeah, she's pretty. They probably got their looks from her. And then I was looking through the VN, I was reading it, and there came a scene where Yuji's mom has sex with Yuji. So incest apparently runs deep in this family. Or at least it does in the women of the... Crap, what's Yuji's last name? Damn, I can't remember it. It runs deep in their family anyway. Or in the female side of their family. Maybe Kazuki got it from their mom. Who knows? Anyway, so dad dies, mom dies. Yuji's alone. Sister's also dead, or so he thinks. And so he has no family left. What happens? Well, there was a very rich, very white, blonde-haired guy who, in the future, shoots a rocket at a helicopter buyer who would buy paintings from Yuji's dad. Kazuki's paintings from Yuji's dad. And he at one point asked Yuji's dad if Yuji had any skill like Kazuki, and then his dad said, don't embarrass me. Of course he doesn't. He's useless. Well, he decides to adopt Yuji. And he does really creepy things, like put Yuji in a Kazuki wig so Yuji looks like Kazuki, and he really looked like Kazuki. It's actually uncanny. Wow. But then he does weirder things where he pretty much molests Yuji. So at the tender age of, I don't know how old he was. He was probably around 10 years old. So at about 10 years old, Yuji has made out with his sister, had sex with his mother, probably had sex with his sister. I'm not sure about that. Got molested by an older European man. Yuji's life is kind of bad. So Heath ends up, the guy who ended up adopting Yuji was named Heath Oslo. So Heath ends up, he does some shady stuff, but you don't really know what. And then he ends up leaving. He lives in this giant mansion. And then one day, this other guy comes to Yuji, and he doesn't want to molest Yuji, at least as far as I could tell. He wants to beat Yuji's butt. Maybe he wanted to rape him too. Who knows? Anyway, he starts to beat Yuji, and then Yuji has enough of it and ends up killing him. Oslo sees this, and he's like, you have potential. You can turn into a weapon. And so he takes Yuji to, air quotes, school. Turns out Heath is actually a terrorist, and a big time one. And he has his own training camp for other terrorists to bring up child soldiers, child assassins. And that's what he does. He puts Yuji through this. Yuji becomes a killing machine. He is just basically, Yuji at present day can kill anybody and anything like that, and is impressive. Now imagine Yuji doing this as a 10-year-old boy who dresses like a girl on all of his assassination trips. He does he meets this other girl, I can't remember her name, and his graduation mission was actually to fight her to the death, which he fails at, and then she disappears, and you never see her again. And she's not mentioned until the last episode. But other than that, Yuji pretty much had no good confrontation with humans. He just killed people left and right, whatever Oslo wanted him to do. And that was the case until Oslo's mansion was broken into by who other than his master, Asako. And Asako ends up breaking through the mansion, killing a bunch of terrorists. She goes into the basement where there's this giant tunnel where Oslo looks like he escaped, and she finds a door. She opens the door, and there they find Yuji. And it is revealed, after Yuji's been taken to the hospital and stuff, he has been badly, badly injured. During his time as an assassin, he has multiple bullet wounds, multiple cuts on his body from knives, multiple stab wounds, stuff like that. And this is still a kid. Yuji's still 10 or 11 years old. He's not very old. This is crazy. And so he's taken in by Asako, and Yuji's basically just this untalkative, doll. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there. He'll eat a little bit, but he doesn't really like to. He doesn't follow orders much. He just kind of sits there. And then this is where we basically start his life with Asako, and everything kind of takes an upturn, sort of. It's interesting, but it's also it was frustrating to watch, and I'll explain why it was frustrating a little bit later. But so basically, this is a story that's been done, 1,000 times, millions of times probably, in the history of both anime, cinema, books, any kind of media whatsoever, where someone broken is taken in by someone who's good or motherly or fatherly, and then they try to make them unbroken. They try to fix them. And that's what Asako does to Yuji. Slowly and slowly, Yuji starts to talk. Eventually, he'll go from short words to full sentences, and then he'll be able to hold conversations. JB visits very frequently, and then she'll see the progress that Yuji's making, which is very nice. Asako apparently can't cook. She tried to cook Yuji deer penis and testicles one day to make him strong. That was something. I like how Yuji has this charm, apparently, where every girl just falls for him. It happened with his sister. It happened with his mother. It happens with JB really quickly. Yuji's still a kid, and she swoons for this guy. And it actually happens to Asako a little bit later too, I guess. But so through the raising of Yuji, eventually Asako gets him a puppy that he names John, even though the puppy's a girl. And then Yuji, Asako, and John live pretty nicely. Asako eventually gets Yuji, or she starts training Yuji in the ways of the sniper, since that is what she was mostly known for. And eventually she how do I put this? She tries to teach him how to kill again. And this is where I was starting to say it was frustrating, because we had just seen Yuji be this ultimate killing machine. He was this guy who would kill anybody and anything when he was ordered to. Now, he can't even think about shooting anything without throwing up. And they explained it in a way where, I also explained it something like, I'm paraphrasing here, You have a bunch of mind control mumbo jumbo in your head from Heath that tells you to kill, 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 kill. And then I put my own mind control mumbo jumbo on top of that to pretty much disable it. And that's like a lock keeping your killing instincts intact, or at bay rather. And it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. It doesn't make any goddamn sense to me. I think it's kind of a dumb way to go about it. And this is what I mean by it's frustrating. Yuji's dog. I have a dog, okay? And when a dog gets taken by a bear, you fight that bear, okay? I don't care if you're going to die fighting that bear. You save your dog. That is your dog. That is your family. Yuji says to himself, let go of John. John is my family. What does Yuji do? Nothing. He runs after her with a gun, tries to fire, can't do it. Okay, Yuji's about to get eaten. What happens? Oh, look, my killer sight pops out for half a second. He stabs the bear in the eye. He escapes from the bear, and then he's going to kill it. And then he sees cubs, and then he doesn't. He doesn't kill it. I mean, I kind of see the thing. I can kind of see why he showed mercy. Or no, I shouldn't say that. I do see why he showed mercy. It's just a mom trying to feed her children, and that's why he doesn't want to kill her, because she wants to just feed her children, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Well, here's where I have an issue with that, Mr. Yuji. And yes, you're just a child, but you are also a killer. So I'm going to hold you up to higher standards. It doesn't matter if it's a mom with kids trying to feed them. That is your family, okay? It's you above everybody else. You're number one. It doesn't matter what she's trying to feed, who she's trying to feed. You know the saying, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one? That's bullshit, okay? It's the needs of the one, and you are the one, okay? You yourself are the one. Your needs supersede the needs of everything else. That is survival of the fittest. That is kind of how it goes. And therefore, if this mom who wants to feed her kids, aunt, cousin-in-law, whatever, it doesn't matter. You shoot her in the face. You kill that bear because it took your dog. That is your dog. That is your family. You defend it. You don't just let it die. It's not right. I think I'm getting sidetracked here. I got really annoyed at that part. Okay, so bear aside, and the really irritated me. After the whole bear thing, Yuji says he wants to get stronger. He asks Asuko to take off that lock that's keeping his killing instincts aside, and she says no. And Yuji's like, but I want to get stronger, and then they have this whole argument for a while, and basically Asuko relents. And the reason she relents is because she's starting to get sick. Eventually, a phone call comes for 9029, which is Asuko at this point, to do a job, and she can't refuse, otherwise she'll be tried for treason, yada, yada, yada. Yuji goes and takes that job instead. So Yuji's been doing this for a little while. We have a bit of a time skip, and then so Asuko says, I'll make you the real 9029, and she ships him off to the army. And this is where we meet a very colorful cast of characters. And these characters pretty much make up the platoon that Yuji's in. The first guy we meet, his name is Danny. He's like this big, black, bald, muscular dude. He calls Yuji Shorty. And it was pretty... I really liked the relationship that these two had. It was very love-hate. It was very... and I might get some flack for saying this, but it was very Jackie Chan, Chris Tucker, Rush Hour kind of thing that I really liked. I don't know, man. Just something about pairing a black dude with an Asian guy just really works. Then when we had Robert, who was really, really obsessed with Emoto H games. Ugh. And then he was pretty much the stereotypical hacker of the group. And then we had Millie, who was the one girl who fell in love with Yuji, and she was also a sniper, and Yuji was the only one who managed to best her in a contest. And we have a good chunk of episodes that just focuses around them and Yuji's life in the army. It focuses how Millie fell in love with him. And they all call him different names. Like Danny calls him Shorty. Millie calls him Genie. I don't remember what Robert calls him. And then like the platoon leader just called him Yuji. Or Kazumi. Oh, I remember his last name. They just called him Kazumi. But basically they spend a lot of time in this one area where there's wars going on. And something nice about it is that they never... At one point, I think Danny asks, like, are we winning? And then Yuji or somebody else says, it's impossible to know while you're here. Like, maybe if we kill more than we die, then maybe we're winning, but it's just impossible to know. Too many people are dying. And then here Yuji still has the thing where he's vomiting... like he manages to kill something. He kills a bird, and then he vomits. And then it's a running theme where like there's a point where they get into a firefight, and Yuji's killed a couple people, and he's really getting sick. There's blood in his vomit, and they give him like 9 bullets, and like, we need you to keep killing. And then like one of the girls was like, or one of the guys was like, are you trying to kill Yuji? Like, this will be the end of him. But Yuji powers through it. He ends up killing them all, or he ends up using up all his bullets, killing as many people as he can. And I think that's like the beginning of where he's able to kill without vomiting. I think so. It's kind of unclear the way they do it, but other than that, like there's a firefight, and then there's meeting all the 3 member. Those are 3 main ones. There's a platoon leader, and then there's a guy who Yuji used to instruct, and he calls him Kazumi Kaka or something like that. And then there's Agnes, who is basically like the head of the squad or whatever. I don't really know much about the army, but Agnes is basically the head of the entire squad that's being trained. Then Yuji's platoon is a subset of that squad, if that makes sense. So eventually time passes by. Everybody lives except for Danny. Danny ends up dying by an accident. They don't actually really get into it. It's actually really sad. Like, Yuji's annoyed at Danny. Like, how can you die over something so stupid? When she's supposed to do this and this? Like, this has to be some kind of joke. It's nice to see that Yuji actually does feel something revolving, like loyalty and friendship at this point in his life. This is pretty close to the Yuji we know today. And then, like, after that, Yuji leaves, and then we cut back. He leaves the army, comes back to Japan, sees Asako, and Asako's. Okay, this is something I forgot to mention when I was talking more about Asako, and I was talking about like the power Yuji has over women. Okay, he sleeps with Asako. She takes his virginity at like the age of 11 or 12. And then he sleeps with JB shortly after, like the next day. And so he comes back after the trip to the army, and then the first thing he does is sleep with Asako. So it's an interesting relationship he had with her. And that kid, he says at one point, like, I didn't know whether to call her mother or father or anything like that. So I called her master because that seemed the most suited. And I feel like that really suits him because, I would say you wouldn't have sex with your mom, but Yuji already has. So yeah. Anyway, Yuji goes on another trip. He comes back. Asuko's actually gotten even worse now, and she's on her deathbed. And they have this moment, and this moment is actually really, really sad. It actually got me to tear up. I didn't expect that because I didn't really care for Asako, but I care for Yuji, and I feel the kind of pain that he's feeling. And Asako like has her final words. Yuji cries. She calls him a crybaby. And then she passes away in her sleep. And Yuji's words, she went to sleep and she never woke up. Then JB takes care of the body. And then Yuji, not being able to stand living in the house that he lived in with Asako anymore, moves in with JB. And then he does this great thing, which is to go on a trip. And this is a great way to deal with grief in real life, is you just break yourself out of where you are. And like that could be you leave the country, you leave the city, you go somewhere completely new, somewhere you've never been before. You do things you don't normally do. You eat food you don't normally eat. And that's great. Yuji drives a bike, which he doesn't usually do. That's not true. He did do that a couple times, but whatever. He goes up to Hokkaido. His goal is to just go north. Keep going north, and then maybe something will happen. And then eventually, like, he has all these adventures. He tells JB that he loves her, and then she asks him if he's drunk. That's a nice moment between the two. And basically he's just off having his own little adventures, and then his bike, which was actually Asuko's bike, breaks down. And it's nice how it's like there's some things that this anime gets really, really nicely. And one of the things is like this subtle way that the mind works. Like how just the smallest things can have the greatest impact on you. And this is a good example of it, is where his bike breaks down, a guy comes to pick him up. And he says, "Oh, are you heading anywhere?" And Yuji's like, "No, I just kind of got on a bike and started driving, and I didn't really have anywhere to go." And then the guy laughs and he says, "That's youth for you." And he drives away. And then Yuji gets kind of contemplative and says, "Youth, my youth. I'm going to relive my youth." And that gets him to... that gets him to... Jeez, why is it so hard to say this? That gets him to ask to and be enrolled into the school, Maihama, I think it's Mihama. It's either Mihama or Maihama. It's kind of hard. Maihama Academy. And that's something I really like. Like the tiniest thing that someone can say can have this profound effect on you in ways you can never imagine. That guy just saying that one word made Yuji decide to enroll in school, which made him meet all these girls, save their lives in the first season, and then end up kind of being saved in this season. All by kind of just this one guy saying this one thing. That's really nice. That's really cool. And I don't think most people see it that way. But I think it's like, it's just the subtle truth of life that the smallest things can have the most profound impact on you. And you never know what it is. So after that, we pretty much break out of the flashbacks. Yuji's finished talking about his past to JB. And then he goes to return to Maihama. And then he gets a call. He's like, oh, you got work. You can't refuse, otherwise you'll be tried for treason. Same thing they said to Asuko way back when, which means it's a really, really important mission. So Yuji sets up shop, and by which I mean he lays down in a building with his sniper ready to shoot. And then a person says, someone's coming. It's a terrorist. He has to die. And so it was pretty obvious from me, or to me, that this was his sister calling him. Well, the guy was a guy, but the guy who was the person who was commanding the guy calling Yuji was his sister, and it seemed really obvious to me because there's no reason for them to hide the voice unless it was going to be like maybe JB or something. But even then, they really wouldn't hide the voice. It would have to be someone who you wouldn't think was alive. And the only thing I could think of was Kazuki. So I pretty much guessed at that point that Kazuki was still alive. So basically what happens is that Kazuki uses Yuji as a test to kill Oslo. Basically, Heath shows up on a boat and he has a nuke with him, and Yuji is tasked with shooting him. And the thing is, Yuji might have been able to go through with it, but then his sister plays the sound of a music box that Heath always had on him, and he would always give Yuji chocolate from this music box. And that means that Yuji, basically the melody of the music box combined with the chocolate is reinforcement. It's like good reinforcement to get him to do whatever they wanted to do. And I think for Yuji might have been for killing. It's kind of implied. It's not really said right out. But I think playing with that box, it could have done two things. It either strengthens his resolve to kill, or it conflicts with the person Yuji is now and lessens it. And I honestly think it lessened his resolve to kill in that moment. And I think he would have at least taken a shot in that situation if the music hadn't played. But he ends up freaking out, screaming. He can't shoot Oslo. He just freaks out. He can't handle any of this. And I think he passes out. Or he vomits. Or maybe both. That pretty much... Okay. Up until then, that was all one arc. That was the Yuji's past arc. And then this begins another arc, which is... This season's actually only 2 arcs, I think. And I have an issue with this arc. After that, after Yuji's past, after Yuji tries to kill Heath, he does nothing. He does nothing until like the second to last episode. So Yuji is like completely and 100% useless. He gets benched. Pretty much what happens. He gets benched in a jail cell. I'm using quotes here. And that's it. He does nothing. Basically what happens is Yuji is said to have done a terrorist attack. As soon as we see the guy who's shooting, it's like, nope, that's not Yuji. He wouldn't do it like that. It's obviously someone who just looks like him. Whatever. And Yuji is now basically in an Ichigaya prison. And surprise, surprise, who's in the prison? It's his sister, who is now apparently an AI. And that's something. I'll get more into that a little bit later. But so up until the last episode, Yuji doesn't really do much of anything. So I'm going to finish talking about Yuji then by skipping to the last couple episodes. So Yuji he ends up getting broken out of the prison and by his harem basically. And in the second to last episode, he knows that Heath is on a ship waiting for Yuji, and Yuji is going to go on a suicide mission to kill him. And everybody has a problem with this except for Yuji. And there's a reason why, and I haven't talked about it until now. Yuji wants to die. It's revealed that he badly, very badly wants to die. He doesn't have a reason to live. His only reason to live is Asuko. And the only reason he hasn't put a bullet in his brain is because he knows Asuko wouldn't let him. Asuko told him when he's a child that he is not allowed to die until he saves 5 people. And Yuji had not saved anyone at the time of Asuko's death, so he wasn't allowed to die. But after the first season of Grisaia, he saved 5 girls, the 5 girls in his harem. So after that, in Yuji's own words, it's okay to die now, right? Yuji wants to die, and he's perfectly okay with fighting Oslo, taking out the ship, and dying along with it. He has no issue with that. He doesn't have a reason to live without her. And he, as far as he's concerned, he now has free reign to die because he saved 5 people. And the thing is, I think only JB really knows it. Well, the girls know about it because they saw it written in his closet. But JB, I feel like knows about it more. When she says, she tries to stop him and he won't go, and she says, I knew you wouldn't stop even if I said so. And then Yuji says, I'll be back, I promise. And I don't know if you guys felt it, but I felt that promise to be very empty. Excuse me, empty. My voice shot out there. I don't think Yuji cared if he came back at all. He was okay with just dying. And so that promise was just more or less saying, if I make it back, I will, but there's a good chance I just won't. So Yuji ends up going on a raid of Oslo's ship, and the second to last episode ends on a frame, which is actually a CG from the VN, where he's choking a guy out. I love this imagery. It is disgusting. It is so gross. The face this guy makes, the way that Yuji chokes him and just squeezes the life out of this guy's neck. I love it. It's fantastic. Really, really nicely done. The last 2 episodes, or the last episode especially, really, 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 really made me love Eden. Because I never really considered Eden to be heavy, or never considered Grisaia in general to be heavy on the action. I don't like when VNs try to have action because it's a visual novel, but the visuals are still static. And it's not like manga where you can have lots of panels really quickly to simulate the action. There's nothing like that in a VN. That's why you don't really like action-heavy VNs. Like Yumiko's route, even though she is best girl, had a lot of fighting with Yuji, but it was all just a still image, where sometimes this image would flash red to show that Yuji's getting hurt, sometimes blood would drip to see he's really getting hurt, but it would still just be a still image, and I didn't like that. But holy crap, the fight between Yuji and his little brother clone guy was awesome. Holy shit, man, that is how you do a fight. And what's cool is, so they use booster drugs in this, and I think actually the first thing I think about when I hear booster drug is I think about Tales, the Tales series, specifically Zilia, because they use boosters in that too. And I guess I had 3 thoughts technically. First was Tales and how I want to play. Second was boosters are how Asuko died. It ruins your body, and Yuji didn't want to use them, but then his clone said he uses them all the time, which leads me to believe that Yuji will probably die relatively early, at least compared to the rest, compared to the girls in his harem. He's probably gonna not live very long. Like, he might live to his 60s or something, depending on how much of these drugs he's used. And it was also revealed much earlier that when he was a child assassin, he was heavily drugged, very heavily, to the point where his mind was pretty much, he couldn't keep memories. They just drugged him over and over and over. But the fight. The third thing I thought about when the booster drug was, pretty much any boss fight ever where the boss is defeated, injects himself with a drug and gets really, really strong. It happens like in everything. But anyway, that fight between Yuji and the guy and his clone was the best in the season. It was also like maybe the 3rd or 4th fight in the season. There wasn't that many. And then Yuji confronts Heath, and they have this whole thing. The confrontation with Heath wasn't all that great, honestly. It was mostly just resolution for Yuji. The nice thing about this whole raid, other than the battle with his clone, was Yuji being hurt, having a goddamn stab wound, and then like trying to leave, and then like there's an explosion behind him because the ship's blowing up, and he a bunch of embers fly past him, and they turn into sakura blossoms, cherry blossoms, and then he sees Asuko, and then Asuko tells him basically, it's not your time yet. You're not allowed to die. Get the hell out of the ship. And then the ship explodes, and then Yuji he falls in the water, and by law of anime, if you fall in the water, you're incapable of dying. So Yuji makes it out, and then he he shows up like, apparently he's like wounded heavily, and then he shows up to Eden, which I'll talk about more later, a year or so later, 2 years later, where all the girls are, and he basically has an island harem now, which includes the 5 girls from the first series. His sister JB comes and visits, and then the principal comes and visits too. So his harem is pretty friggin' big. And that's all that I have to talk about Yuji. I'm going to talk about the girls next. The 5 main girls from his harem in the first season. I'm going to go about this in no particular order. First, I'm going to talk about Yumiko. The girls in general didn't do much in this season. This season was more about Yuji, but Yuji also didn't do much since half the season was like dedicated to his past. But basically, when they decide to rescue Yuji, they all start doing stuff. And I get that Yumiko's role was the most boring. She was buying and selling stuff on eBay over and over and over to get money. She was contacting people to get information. She was delegated the role of hacker without hacking anything. She was just the navigator, basically. And that kind of sucks. It really sucks to see the girl that like you like the most having a really boring role. For God's sakes, Michiru had a better role than her. And it's Michiru. She doesn't have any skills other than being dumb, which they actually make really good use of. Yumiko basically... So, I mentioned before that the girls end up breaking Yuji out of the prison, and they have this really cool heist. And I love heist. I love heist movies. I love heist Let's Plays. I just love heists because there's 2 awesome parts of the heist. There's the setup, and I love watching people set up for a heist. I just think it's really cool. And then there's the heist itself, but the heists usually have multiple parts. And I love watching one of the most fun things about heists is that at some point something goes wrong, and usually something big, and then it's the people who are doing the heist who have to adapt to it. And that's one of the best things about heists is the adaptations. That's something I really like. So watching getting ready for heist was really, really, really cool. And then Yumiko was delegated to basically navigating all the girls while they're out in the field, while Yumiko was somewhere at a central location. And that's pretty much all she did, which kind of sucks. They had her like actually voice her love for Yuji, which is fine. I guess she is kudere, but still, I felt like it was kind of unnecessary. Makina had a much bigger role, and I don't like Makina, but how do I say this? Okay, the only reason I don't like Makina is because I don't like her voice. I like her character a lot, but her voice actress makes me want to drown in a sea of cancer. I just hate it. But Makina, being trained by Yuji herself, is a pretty good sniper. So she goes out and buys a giant like anti-tank rifle, and it's awesome. And I like watching Makina. Like she's smart, but she's stupid. She's smart, but she doesn't use her brains, basically. And so watching her actually use her brains in calibrating this weapon is really cool. And I really like that. And then I liked her whole situation where she set up in this really high-end hotel. She broke the glass really nicely, and then she just sets up with her sniper, and she's ready to go. She takes out, rest in peace, Tuna Man. It's been nice knowing him. She takes out her Tuna Man, and then she takes out multiple Humvees, which is awesome. And Makina, like, she none of the girls did much, but of the things that Makina did, of the things that they did, Makina had probably the coolest role. And it was just so cool. Especially the fact that when she shot her rifle, everything in her room would blow back. Her hair would blow back, her bed would move back, everything moved. That was really cool. Sachi did Sachi things, which is create weapons. Non-lethal weapons. They were very specific. Sachi probably had the second coolest moment of the heist, where she basically made a bunch of homemade smoke bombs, threw them out, had 2 like butcher large kitchen knives, runs into a smoke screen where there's a bunch of armed thugs who are kidnapping Yuji, and she just takes them all out. And of course, being Sachi, wearing a maid uniform while she does it, but she beats them and she knocks them out pretty much with 1 hit each. I can't even describe how cool the imagery is of a maid wearing a gas mask, dual wielding knives, fighting a bunch of armed thugs in a smoke screen. Like, how do you do that? How do you make that up? That is so cool. It's something that shouldn't be cool, but is. It's so cool. And then we have Michiru, who I talked about before. She also doesn't do much. Okay, Michiru is basically comic relief. That's her character. Unless you go down to her route, then things get really depressing. But Michiru is, on the surface, mostly comic relief. And that's kind of what she does. But I really like what Kazuki does with Michiru. Kazuki is basically the one supplying everybody information, giving them jobs and such. She's pretty much the heist leader. She's the oh my god, I'm blanking on the name of the guy who leads the A team, but she's that guy, Hannibal. She is the Hannibal of the harem. So so what she gets Michiru to do is basically buy and sell a bunch of land. She basically moves billions of yen around in buying and selling stuff, and she ends up with two things. Oh, by the way, she's flying all over the world. She flies to like Singapore, she flies to the States, she flies to just a bunch of different places all in one day, and she's exhausted when she gets back, which is understandable. She also has no idea what happened because Kazuki's telling her to say all these things that she doesn't really understand. But in the end, the group now owns a ship, a submarine, specifically a submarine. They own that, and they own I was going to say they own a private island, but that's actually Yuji's. And I'll get to that pretty soon, actually. So, to recap so far, Yumiko, for the whole season and for the heist arc, is delegated to Navigator, Overseer. What's the name of Batgirl when she gets crippled? I think it's either Oracle or it's Watchtower. It's one of those two. She's basically that. Makina is the sniper. Awesome. Sachi is an assassin without killing. Really cool. And then Michiru is basically a buyer and seller. She just buys a lot of stuff. She's a moneymaker, more or less. And then there's Amane. Amane is the getaway driver, which honestly, when you think about it, Amane kind of has to do that. It's her best quality. I don't know if they really covered it in the VN. I can't really remember. Or sorry, I don't remember if they covered it in season 1. I can't really remember. But in the VN, Amane's exceptionally terrifying driving skills are very, very well noted. And it's like one of the defining features of her. I'm going to talk a bit more about Amane than I do the other girls, mostly because I had a big issue with Amane in that I actually don't like her character, but that's not what I have an issue with. Amane is Yuji's girlfriend. Okay, she is the one who has the most attachment to him and is the one that Yuji should be most attached to. But she doesn't do anything this season. She does nothing. She has no development. The relationship has no development. Granted, it's hard to have a relationship with a guy who's in jail, but ignoring that part, I feel like of all the girls, Amina should be the one who's like maybe most worried or the most proactive, but she's not. She spaces out a lot, and she's just like, oh, we're doing what we can do. And I feel like she just should have been more proactive about the guy she loves who is in peril. He's going to die unless you do something about it. And yes, you are doing stuff, but you're not doing much. Like she never asks, is there any more that I can do? She never asks, is this all? She never asks, like, can I please help you with more stuff? All she does is memorize driving routes. And then we get to Eden. So the namesake of of this season, as well as what I talked about earlier, the Eden of Grisaia. Oh, actually, now that I think about it, the fruit of Grisaia, season 1, they never explain what the fruit is. Huh. Maybe it's the innocence of a woman. I don't know. Or maybe it's Yuji. Maybe Yuji's the fruit. If it's been explained what the fruit is, somebody tell me in the comments. I'm really curious now. But the Eden. So Eden is literally an island owned by Yuji. It used to belong to Asuko, and she transferred it over to him in her will when she died, but she never told anybody, apparently. But Kazuki, Yuji's sister, did. Oh, let's talk more about Kazuki, shouldn't I? I'll do that after I talk about Eden. So Eden is literally an island that is owned by Yuji, and it is their getaway place. After the heist and after all that, all the girls in Yuji's harem, including his sister, are all wanted by the government of Japan. They are criminals. And so there's only one place that they can escape to, Eden. And Eden is like literally this gorgeous, luscious, tropical island that is, the inhabitants consist of Yumiko, Makina, Sachi, Michiru, Amane, Yuji. It's Yuji and 5 other girls. Sorry, 6 other girls because Kazuki's there. Yuji, 6 girls. Sometimes his teacher shows up. Sometimes JB shows up. Agnes might show up one day. It's just Yuji and his. It's literally a harem island. It's the setting. It's literally the setting for a porno. That is what Eden is. It is the setting for every porno in existence, for every hentai in existence. That is what Eden is. I didn't expect it. it's just I can unravel in my mind like all the H scenes that they built out of this. Like they were sitting around the creators of Grisaia. They were sitting around, crowding around the table, and like, man, the first VN was such a good hit. Like, it was great. The only problem is we couldn't get too many H scenes because we couldn't find it throughout all the drama with all the girls. And they're like, what if none of the girls have drama in the second VN? We just have Yuji have all the drama, and then the girls can make him feel better by having sex with him. And then the main director's like, oh, that wouldn't make sense. So they wouldn't do that in the school. And then like the guy who was about to get a promotion is like, that's the thing. They're not in the school anymore. They're in a tropical island. And then the main director's like, and then he promotes the guy. That is how Eden of Grisaia was made. So enough about Eden. Let's talk a little bit more about Kazuki. I mentioned that Kazuki was revealed to be an AI when Yuji was arrested. Turns out her body was basically just in a capsule full of water, and then her brain was made to power the AI named Thanatos. So her body's eventually rescued by JB, and then she's taken to Eden along with all the other girls. And she joins Yuji's harem, and then Yuji slaps her across the face, tells her how worried he was, yada, yada, yada. She actually is also the one who got him into My Hama Academy, which is kind of nice about her. I do like that even after her supposed death, she still always looked after Yuji. That's really nice. And yeah, I know she's in love with him, incest, yada, yada, yada. But still, it's nice to see that she still loves her little brother like that. So, Kazuki, I only really have one other big thing to talk about Kazuki, and that's when she and Yuji meet again on the ship when she's in her physical body. And she's still bossy around Yuji. And Yuji, being a grown-ass man who is now significantly taller than his sister and muscular and powerful and a killer, doesn't take this crap anymore from her. He's actually like tired of her being this kind of bossy older sister. So he takes her, and it's never shown what he does to her, but I can only assume it was sexual in nature due to the way that she was adjusting her clothes afterwards and the words she spoke to him after. You can only do those kind of things with your sister, nobody else. And Yuji agrees. But then when she leaves, he thinks to himself, what kind of things? Yuji's not dumb, okay? He's smart. And I feel like he does this as a self-defense mechanism to just like, so he doesn't have to think that he does these kind of things with his sister. Like, oh, I'm just playing around with my sister like any brother would do. It's definitely not wrong. Incest is totally normal, right, guys? I feel like that's what Yuji's been doing. Because, like, you can, like, if we think about, what was that anime called? The Irregular at Magic High School. If you think about that guy, he was pretty much a robot. He's like part machine. So it makes sense that he doesn't understand love because he's a goddamn robot, even though he wasn't really, but he pretty much was. But Yuji's not a robot. He's a man. A really awesome man who likes to kill people, but he's still a man. And therefore, Yuji should really understand this concept of love and sex and yada, yada, yada. But that's kind of my final point. And on that bombshell, it's time to end. Good night, everybody. No, I'm not going to end it like that. So Eden of Grisaia, if you click the link below, that jumps to the verdict. Welcome to the verdict part. This is where I talk about how I felt about the anime. First season of Grisaia, I really, really liked. I don't exactly remember what I gave it. I think I gave it somewhere around an 8. I should probably have looked up what I gave it, but to be honest, it's kind of hard to find with all the, recaps we did. But so things that I really like about Eden of Grisaia, Yuji's past was an incredible story. The fight between Yuji and his clone was phenomenal. I guess that's a spoiler. God damn it, I just spoiled it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I spoiled he has a clone. I'm sorry. Anyway, the fight that he has with his clone was fantastic. The story of Yuji's past was great. The heist was really cool to watch. And I really like I guess it really wasn't character development. It's just character revelation of Yuji. I like watching his harem grow. And I like the fact that he literally has, another spoiler, a harem island now. Things I didn't like about Eden of Grisaia. Girls didn't do much, aside from the heist stuff. Even with the heist stuff in there, they really didn't do much. Amane did not do nearly enough. Amane should have done a lot more given her current attachment to Yuji. The lady who was married to Robert, the the daughter of the guy that Yuji killed when he was a kid, she threatened to kill Yuji when he got back from killing Heath. She never does that. Why not? Why hasn't she attempted? That's also a thing I don't like. And really, I think those are my only complaints. No, I have one more. It was too short. And I know the first season was also roughly 10 episodes, and I know like the quality is really high, and because of that, it's harder for them to develop more episodes, like it takes more time away, but it is just so good. And not having more than 10 episodes a season, it hurts. I love this series. I love Eden. I loved the Fruit of Grisaia, and I honestly cannot wait for the next season, which should be starting soon. I can't remember. I think it's starting sometime in the summer. Maybe it's starting in the fall. Might have already started. I should probably check on that. I haven't checked in a while. But I'm really, really looking forward to Labyrinth of Grisaia. I've read a bit of the Eden of VN. I'm waiting for an English, or I know there's an all ages version coming out. I'm hoping that they release, I think I already mentioned this. I'm pretty sure I already mentioned this in the last podcast, but I'm hoping they release an uncensored patch of that. But even if they don't, I might just play it. I don't know. I'm not really willing to play in Japanese. I have a friend who does that. It just seems too cumbersome having the game and then having the script next to it. Ugh. Anyway, that's the end of the Eden of Grisaia episode / review. What I'm going to be doing next week. So I know what I want to review next week. I don't know what I want to review the week after. Like, I have a couple of thoughts. I have a couple of options, but I'm having a hard time deciding. So I'm going to kind of cop out here and call it community interaction. And I'm going to make a straw poll. And the straw poll will be linked both in the description of the video on YouTube, as well as on my Twitter page. If you're listening on iTunes or Podomatic, it'll be on Podomatic. But if you're listening on iTunes, you'll have to either look at my Twitter or look at the YouTube page to find the link. So the straw poll will have a couple of options for what I'm going to review. Fate Stay Night will be on that. The second season, which I didn't watch yet. God, what's that anime called? My Love Story will be on that. And there'll be a couple more options. Those are the only two I have in mind right now. But next week, what I'm going to talk about is an anime that got so much hype that I didn't understand. It had so much praise and all this following all over a girl that I just thought had the most generic design. And I really didn't understand it. I'm going to get some flame for saying this. But, come at me. I'm going to review and talk about, is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? I'm going to see if it lives up to the hype that it got from Anna Twitter. I'm going to see if it lives up to the hype that it got from all the people who watched it. And all the people that flooded Twitter and all the goddamn anime forums with it. And created multiple subreddits over this one girl. Let's see how it stands up. So, I'll bring that to you next week, assuming my data doesn't get corrupted. Please, gods of audio recordings and podcasts, allow my audio to go through unharmed. Please and thank you. But that's all I got for this week, guys. I will see you again next week. I'm Roz JMB. We'll see if Is It Wrong to Pick Girls in the Dungeon is nearly as good as everybody says. Bye!